Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. Super mini mail call as expected because I have a package in front of me. So let's get right to it. This one comes from Alan in Pembroke, Ontario. Hi to all my Canadian viewers. Okay, I have a little assortment of stuff. Everything is all bagged up, but in the bottom of the box was this. Is this like a Radio Shack bag from very, very long time ago? It feels, yeah, it is. It's almost made out of like tissue paper. So it's very, very thin, but it's actually plastic. And if you can see, this is definitely a bag from Canada, because on this side, it's in French. And if I flip it around, a division of Tandy Electronics Limited. That is a very interesting artifact, I gotta say. I don't remember the bags looking like this ever. And I definitely shopped at Radio Shack when I was very young. We used to have a Battery of the Month Club card, where you'd go in and I guess once a month you could get one battery. Does anyone else remember that? I kind of recall that it was like for 12 months, and if you went in, they would tick off the month that you were in, and you get your free battery, like a 9-volt battery, I think is usually what we picked up. I mean, it's kind of silly to get like one AA or AAA battery, but 9 volts were the most logical one to get because you could put those in smoke detectors and stuff like that. All right, well, let's see what's in here. I did not immediately see a note. Let's just look through these items. Looks like we have, I'm gonna say these are key switches. They look like from a Apple IIe, perhaps? Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are from an Apple IIe. Can I get closer on the little brand name there? SMK, that's what it is. So SMK key switches, and I'm pretty sure these are used on the IIe among other machines. That one's the latching one for the caps lock. Wait, are these all latching? That one is as well. Wait, these are all latching switches. It's like the mother load of SMK caps lock switches. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I guess I'm never ever gonna need another caps lock key switch for probably the rest of my life, that's for sure. Absolutely amazing. I have to wonder, how did Alan even end up with all of these caps lock key switches? All right, next up we have, oh, Matrox Millennium, right? So just a standard PCI card, but oh wait, okay. For a second I thought this had DVI, which I thought would have been very cool because digital video interfaces on PCI cards are not super common. And it's actually something I've been looking for my Dolch PC for an upcoming video. Now, funny thing is, I thought Matrox was a Canadian company. On the back, assembled in the USA. All right, next we have a little box, and oh wow, a whole assortment. Lots of goodies. So these are super useful and something I used to buy from eBay or AliExpress in the past. Not so easy right now due to political stuff going on. I won't really talk about that too much. A couple bent pins on this one. These are super useful for me. I plug these into motherboards and then can use compact flash cards. So these two are for laptops, and we have the two different versions. One with the female connector, one with a male. Just depends on the way your laptop is or whatever device you're using. We have a card bus or PCMCIA or PC card. Not sure which one it is. I thought card bus is not the same as the other ones. Maybe it is. Looks like it's got an actual USB 2.0 jack right on there. Also, oddly enough, there is a barrel jack, which I'm assuming is to power up the USB. I don't think there's enough power on these, on the connector. And then we have an LED. And what I assume is a button or something, or an antenna. Oh, what the heck? What is this? It's like a radio card or something. Notebook adapter. Doesn't really say on the back what this is. Let's zoom in a little bit. Does anyone recognize this? Has a picture of an NEC there, but why does it have a little telescoping antenna? That is odd. Very, very odd. 32-bit PC card, AKE. Okay. We have an AMD DX4 100, 3-volt heatsink required. How do the pins look on the back? Oh, not too bad. I mean, yeah, bent up a little bit, but nothing that isn't easy to fix. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, we have a little bag that has some, oh, I don't know what these are. I guess this is kind of a zip RAM 4C16256. Can't say I've ever seen this large package. Typically, zip RAM will have the same number of pins as the DIP version. So for 256 kilobit by 1 DRAM, it'll have like, I don't know, 16, 18 pins, something like that. How many does this have? No, obviously, okay, no, this is a 40 pin package because it's same size as this 40 pin DIP IC. It's just you take the pins and you squish them together. So I'm assuming this is DRAM and it's 256K, but it's 16 bits wide. So instead of 1 bit or maybe 4 bits, 16 bits wide. I'm not exactly sure what these are used for. If anyone's ever seen anything that uses these 16-bit wide DRAM zip packages, yeah, let me know. Okay, next in the little box was a little keychain with a Commodore logo, and this is 3D printed. Pretty nifty. Next in the box, some interesting looking modules. I'm not going to say these are Sims, because these definitely aren't. Oh, are these cache modules for Pentiums? That's got to be what this is, like a cache on stick or coast modules. Okay, just one of those is a coast module. Others seem to be normal 72-pin DRAM. But yeah, I think that's a coast module of some kind. I don't know if these are proprietary from one motherboard to another. If anyone recognizes this part number, IDT7MPV6202A, then maybe we can figure out what motherboard this goes into. And the back it just says made in Singapore. Okay, also in the box, there was this piece of foam. We have a bunch of 72-pin memory. So it's going to go into my box of 2-test memory. Rammy will be pleased, and that will be some kind of future live stream, maybe something like that, where I test all this RAM with the RAM tester. All right, this little thing was in the box as well. This seems to be a Macintosh to VGA adapter, which actually reminds me, on the Matrox Millennium here, is this just a regular Macintosh pinout? So you can use either a Mac monitor or normal VGA. We also have a PS2 to serial adapter. Now this is a passive adapter and you have to have a mouse that plugs into the PS2 port that can have, well, it uses a sense pin to actually switch modes into standard RS-232 mode. So if you have a mouse that supports that, then you can use these adapters. And lastly, we have a DE9 to RJ45 style connector. This is a typical type of connection, for instance, say to the console port on a Cisco router. All sorts of things from the 90s use this for serial as opposed to having this type of port on the front. And the last thing that Alan sent is this. What is this? It's interesting. It's got a thick cable coming out of it. It almost seems like this is homemade. That's what I'm thinking, at least. And it has an edge connector. Can't quite guess what this might be for yet. Let's look at the bottom of this. Electronic Applications Incorporated, model number PK64. Oh, is this for the 64? Does this plug into the 64's cartridge port? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. And the fact that it says PK64 makes it seem like that's the case. Hard to read serial number sticker, but I think 7437. And this is the front, and this is, and whatever this box is, threshold, tune, DCD, PTT, like push to talk, PAKRAT-64, which is PK64. I have no idea. We're gonna need to look this up. And I have a Commodore 64 cartridge. Let's see if this lines up. Does look like it lines up. Yep, that's the same number of pins. So I don't know. Okay, so I did a Google for PAKRAT-64. Definitely seems to be related. The PK64 Packrat from Advanced Electronic Applications is a packet radio terminal node controller designed specifically for the C64. This device plugs into the expansion port and has a ribbon cable tethered to a large external enclosure. The enclosure houses the TNC hardware and includes 2 EPROMs with software to control the unit. Well, what I'm confused about, if this is a packet radio, wouldn't you need an antenna? How do you connect up like a radio or antenna? There's no, oh, there's stuff on the back. So audio in and a speaker out to radio, and it takes 13 volts DC. So I just clicked on the manual before I noticed the back of this thing had extra ports I didn't see. I wouldn't be surprised if this interfaces to your radio, and the to radio connection almost certainly is just for controlling the frequency that your radio is tuned into. And I have to wonder if this thing is able to receive packet radio over ham radio, so amateur radio, and potentially transmit, so to allow your 64 to send data across the amateur radio bands. That's my thought. Okay, so here's the manual that I just clicked on. Looks like the PK64 data controller, and there's an HFM64 enhanced high frequency modem. So it looks like this company was originally based in Linwood, Washington, which seems to be way up in North Seattle, and I don't think they exist anymore. So congratulations, you purchased another fine AEA product. Please, before we go any further, may you fill out and return the product support agreement, blah, blah, blah. The Packrat works with a Commodore 64, SS64, and C128 in 64 emulation mode. It allows you to transmit and receive Morse, Baudot, ASCII, AMTOR, and AX25 version 2.0 or below amateur packets. You will not be able to receive Morse unless you purchase the HFM65 described below. Packet operation on VHF and UHF FM will be entirely satisfactory without the HFM64. Packet RTTY and AMTOR operation on HF without the HFM64 is possible, but it'll be less satisfactory for signals mixed with a lot of noise. If you plan to operate on HF, you should consider purchasing the HFM64 HF modem, which includes the LED bar graph tuning indicator, and which will allow you to operate in Morse and will significantly enhance your ability to copy all 5 modes compared to operation with the Packet 64 alone. Now you're part of Packet Radio. Your PK64 represents a major milestone in the pioneering of the exciting new hobby of Packet Radio. And now you're part of it too. No longer are you on the outside looking in as a few hams experiment with new technology. Instead, you are one of them. AEA has for the first time integrated a complete packet controller and the terminal software and needed to operate an advanced amateur packet radio station with MBA Tor software and package it in one package. Plug one end into your computer and the other into your transceiver, and you are on the air. Wow, this is pretty fascinating. I have never done anything with packet radio in the past. People may not realize, but I'm actually a licensed amateur radio operator, but I have to say that even though I've had my license for 15, 16 years at this point, I have never done any packet radio stuff, and I really just dabble in the hobby. I don't really get hardcore into it. Now, one issue I have with even trying to use this is I only have handheld radios. I don't even have mobile radios or anything that would like be good enough to use with this, not to mention all the antennas and stuff that go with it. And of course, you need to be able to listen to packet radio and also transmit packet radio to another node, so you need more than one of these. Now, I have a couple friends who are really much more into ham than I am, but one of them is also into retro computers. So I need to ask them if they maybe can make use of this or know of any packet radio that's transmitting on the air in the Portland area, and we could use this hooked up to an appropriate radio to actually decode the packet radio. That would be cool. Now back on the manual, it says the 5-pin connector carries the audio signals to and from the radio mic and speaker jacks. So there were probably harnesses you could get. And theoretically, I could actually use this with one of my handheld radios because it looks like, yeah, it talks to the PTT or push-to-talk pin. So therefore, those jacks are available on the side of handheld. So I don't know, theoretically, I could do it. Looks like there's a whole section in the appendix about radio hookups. So I think we could look there to see about the pinout. Actually, it says the pinout right here. Pin 1, audio input. Pin 2, AFSK output to the radio mic input. Pin 3 is squelch information in the radio. Maybe left open, yeah, because for instance, the handheld radios I have doesn't have a way to connect anything with the squelch like that. Pin 4 is ground. Pin 5 is the push-to-talk signal as well, and then there's a shield. Okay, yeah, it's actually theoretically doable. Way outside my wheelhouse. But again, I'll talk to my friend and see if if this is somehow possible to use. Maybe he's got gear that could facilitate working with this thing. Now I noticed back on the search results that we do have a couple videos of people showing this off. All right, so Dusty here is using the Packrat hooked up to a mobile transceiver, and let's just see if, well, Dusty's able to get it to do anything. It's actually working.
Look at all those routes.
Yeah, this is all, that's coming over the radio. Okay, very, very, very cool. This is not going to be something I'm going to be able to play around with in this video, in the Super Me mail call video, but this is absolutely something that I think is worth checking out further. Why don't we take a look inside of this and see how it looks? This whole situation is odd. This can't be how this was originally. I assume it looked like this and someone just didn't like that it was exposed with the wires and taped it up. Now, as you saw in the manual, this is not actually a radio. This needs an external transceiver. This is basically just a modem. So it's taking the audio from your radio and also sending audio back to your radio, and it's able to key up your radio, so like the push to talk button, and it can essentially transmit and receive and then decode the data that's coming across the radio link. And inside, it's kind of complex actually, but I'm not surprised since this, as I said, is an actual modem. So the two EPROMs have 1986 date codes on them. And it's sort of my assumption that the EPROMs actually self-load when you plug this into the 64. So this is like the program code. I can't imagine it uses a separate disk or something like that. And yeah, we can kind of see that this tape is just covering up the bare wires. And we have a bunch of adjustments here. I'm not going to touch any of those, of course. Little power regulation circuit. So a 7805 handles the 5-volt regulation for the ICs, but this thing specified it needed 13 volts, which I'm assuming is going to be used for some of the op amps and whatnot that are on here. So what I can do is I'll just plug my adjustable bench power supply into here and give it the 13 volts it is looking for. Okay, so before we get to taking any power, I need to do some double checking. So we're in continuity mode. If I'm on the ground pin, and we look at the outside of the barrel jack, we're getting continuity. What about for the 5 volts? Okay, we're not getting anything. And to the fuse, so it's not a dead short. Now if we go from the center pin of the jack, it's going to the fuse, which is correct. All right, so things look okay. I'm going to turn on the power to the bench power supply, and I'm just going to measure the output of the transistor here as soon as this starts. Oh wow, there's no current draw at all, so this thing isn't even on. I figured it just turns on right away. Well, 13 volts is on the fuse. It's on both sides of the fuse. Now, it is theoretically possible with this that the power is not turned on until the computer is turned on. So even when the power supply is energized like it is now, you need to have this connected to the Commodore 64 and then the computer powered on, and then that might use one of these transistors to turn on the voltage regulation that enables or powers up the rest of this stuff. So I think I'm going to try that, because looking at the manual, it talks about that's what you should do. Plug this into your computer while it's off, plug the power into this, then turn on the computer. Feels like it's been forever since I've actually used a Commodore 64. It's like months at least. Sometimes I have to wonder, have I forgotten how to use a Commodore 64? I don't think that's the case, but it's funny not having used one in so long. I just haven't had any broken ones to fix. All right, it's been a long time since I've used the RetroTink, and well, let's just see if it works. Let's see if my 64 works. The manual for the Packrat said, make sure your 64 is working properly first before you plug it in. Yeah, good advice. Now, if the RetroTink is giving me garbage, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, look, it just works. Okay, awesome. Okay, I think what I need to do first actually is clean this a little bit. That's looking terrible. My little dropper for Deoxit appears to be missing. I seem to have misplaced my little Deoxit dropper bottle. I hate using this stupid thing because this drips all over the place. I'll need to find that. It's been a little while since I've seen it. So I'll just carefully, so we'll just put some on there. There's always way too much. And I'm using some magic eraser. That really gets off the oxidation. It's good stuff when you combine the Deoxit and the magic eraser. Yeah, look at that. Both sides there, much better looking now. Okay, the 64 is off. Let's get this connected in. The power's off to the Packrat. I'm going to turn it on. It's drawing 0 milliamps, and I'm going to turn on the 64. Okay, I have some stuff happening on the screen, and it's drawing 394 milliamps. And I know you can't really see what we're seeing on the screen here. It's a segmented display. It's not a 7-segment display. It looks like a bar graph, and the little LED moved to the middle there. And if I turn this knob, there's a DCD light there. So according to the manual, we need to type sys33333 to start the software. sys33333. Ah, look at that. Packrat, 29th of April, 1986. The manual goes into all the various steps for like calibration and whatnot, but if we type P for packet, disconnected, and I think it wanted us to type my and a call sign. So I'm not typing in a real call sign here. I'm just going to type in fake call sign. Okay, it took that. And then we would type C, and like its example is XYZ, which I think is some kind of a connection that's supposed to be happening. It says connection in progress. Clearly that's not going to work because there's no radio hooked up to this. It says push the F5 key on the keyboard. Oh, looks a bunch of stuff here. Okay, and you hit run stop to go back to the main menu. And yeah, it freaking works. Obviously, the way the colors look is different than the YouTube video because this kernel that I have on this does the gray. Customize the colors to whatever you want. Yep, pretty simple. And it looks like you can use the disk routine to save stuff that you've downloaded or whatever done to disk. I think it supports floppy drives and tape. And we can do Morse code, ASCII. And I'm just pushing keys at this point because I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm assuming it is trying to transmit Morse code. In fact, the PTT light is currently on. PTT is lit. That is neat. Although, why is it still lit? Looks like it's already transmitted. If I hit run stop, okay, the PTT or push to talk light went off. And we have other things, so we can do ASCII. 110 baud, so it says at the top it's receiving and transmitting at 110. Does this transmit? I don't know, you must have to push a key to actually transmit, not F1. Oh, I hit F3 and it looks like it transmitted that. This is a test. Oh, I think it's transmitting, maybe. Oh, neat. Okay, I hit F3, F1. Oh, receive, transmit. Okay. Oh, you can change the baud rate. 300 baud, 110, 150. This is going to be neat to play with if we can figure out some packet radio on the air to listen to and like receive. And maybe my friend has some kind of packet radio stuff we could play around with and test this with. Really neat stuff. I could see back in the day, if you were really into amateur radio back in 1986 when this thing came out, you got one of these and used your Commodore 64 to really play around with this whole world of packet radio and talk to people all around the region where you are and send messages and stuff. And it's really, really nifty. If I hit transmit, yep, the PTT light comes on the radio. So if I hit F1, it goes off, F3 comes on. So now we're in transmit mode. This is 300 baud, much faster. So freaking cool. I assume the M and J is control M and control J, so that's carriage returns and line feeds. Well, this appears to be working. Obviously, without a radio and a little bit more testing, won't know for sure, but right off the bat, yeah, this thing does appear to work. Let's turn off the transmit, and I guess run stop to exit out of that menu, and B for back to basic. Maybe? Might not work with the kernel that I have on this machine. Might need the stock kernel, because that seems to have failed. So I gotta say, that is really quite cool. Now, one thing I think is possible is that you can use software-defined radios to at least receive the packet radio. So you use one of those USB sticks on a modern computer and something like GNU Radio or some other software, and it can probably decode the modem signals that this thing can transmit. So that might be a way for me to test the one-directional transmission from this to at least another computer. So I'd love to hear about people who have used packet radio stuff in the past. And has anyone ever used one of these back on the day with your Commodore 64? And if so, who did you talk to? I'd really, really like to know. I'm also really curious about how expensive this was, because I can imagine this wasn't a cheap piece of hardware. It seems, well, even though this cable seems a little funky, the design of this seems pretty decent, actually. I'm kind of surprised they didn't have a normal cartridge with the ROMs and stuff in the computer, and then another ribbon cable that went to the modem. Seems odd. I don't think this is even shielded, this cable. So that's going to introduce a lot of noise. And maybe that's the difference between the high frequency or the HF version of this rate of the modem that I talked about in the manual, is it used better shielding. So your HF stuff worked better. So that's pretty cool. Alan, thanks very much for sending this stuff in. I'm definitely going to need to revisit this Packrat radio at some point in the future. And if you're watching this, I'd definitely like to know where all these caps lock key switches came from. That's pretty hilarious. As for the rest of this stuff, I'm sure it all just works, like Matrox Millennium. That probably works on the 46DX4100. But these CF adapters are super useful. I'll throw those in my drawer down here, where I sort of am running low, actually. So it's nice to have a little restock because, as I mentioned earlier, not sure how easy it is to get those things right now, at least when I'm recording this video. All right, let's do one more package. This one comes from Jonathan in Nash, Texas. Hi to all my Texas viewers. Just a side note, I'm going to be at VCF in Dallas in June. I think it's like the June, I put the dates on screen. I think it's like June 20th to the 22nd. I will be at that VCF. So if you're in the area, why don't you come and say hello? All right, we have a note, and we have what looked like a first aid kit and then something else in here. Let's see what the note says. Maybe Jonathan was concerned about my safety. And the note says, "Hi Adrian, we met at VCF Southwest, and I was one of the 2 Germans that had you surrounded, not the pilot." Yes, that's right, that's right. So there was a Lufthansa pilot that flew from Germany to come to VCF and meet me. I mean, I think, you know, experience the show, but also to meet me. And he brought some Haribo candy, a big tub of it, that came direct from Germany, you know, hand brought on a plane by the pilot. Scheduled his trip, that did a layover in Dallas, Fort Worth, and came out to see BCF. And yes, we were all talking together, and my recollection is Jonathan, the other German, not the pilot, that was there, actually lived in Texas. And yeah, we're having a good old chat. And let's get back to the note. Sorry, that's pretty funny. I mean, it's been a year, and look, it's coming up again, and I'll be there. Enclosed, find 2 new Gringo Gadget products and a first aid kit from Culinary Emergencies. Well, that's odd. Is it food or something? Use of the first aid kit is entirely at your own risk. I'm not responsible, and I know nothing. This must have candy in it or something. The 2 products are for the TRS-80 Model 1, a simple pluggable keyboard harness to replace the flimsy stock ribbon. Oh, that's awesome. One end solders to the bottom of the main PCB, and the other plugs into the keyboard PCB. Pretty self-explanatory. Opted for an angled pin header to reduce the profile, but still being able to easily plug and unplug it, even when the ICs on the keyboard PCB are socketed. The second item is much more interesting. It's our latest product, a 64 digital I/O board, 64 digital inputs and 64 digital outputs. It plugs in the expansion port of TRS-80 Model 1, and all I have to do is set a base address and provide 5 volts DC. Basic instructions out: control the 4 8-bit wide output ports, OP0 through OP3, and IMP reads the status of the input ports IP0 through IP3. This product came about because I needed to control a paper tape punch that uses proprietary parallel I/O. So I turned the interface into a product, and you should be able to control a Centronics printer or just about anything that uses digital I/O. A manual can be found here. All right. There it is. There is the QR code. So I'll scan that. If anyone else wants to scan that, check it out. And there it is, Gringo Gadgets, Jonathan Eggert. Well, first off, I want to see what's in this. Luckily, this hasn't been sitting around the basement too long. It has been about a month. And so, there we go. Oh, and these are actually German Haribos as well. Always a fan, and not all Haribos, obviously. I'm going to say this is like a caramel, a milk caramel kind of thing. Yeah, it's a long German word, but with milk and butter. That's what I can read out of that. Paddington Bear in Peru. And, blueberry lemon, like sour strips. Yum. Oh, wow. Jonathan, you're too much. This is wild. There's so much stuff here. All right, so these are sour, and I absolutely love sour Haribos. I love sour everything, to be honest. I got like peach slices. We have Fantasia, sort of like a fruit mix thing. Picobellas. Oh, these are my favorite. They're so sweet and sugary, but I love these so much. Can't buy these in the US either. Oh, and these are my other favorites. The Pixel Sours, so good. So freaking good. Wow. Okay, Jonathan, this is outrageous. You just went over the top with what you sent me. Unbelievable. Oh, more of these Picobellas. Star Mix. Funny, my friend here in Portland just gave me a packet of this. My birthday was recently, and I got a US packet of Star Mix. I'm sure it'll not be as good. Interesting is, of course, they're still using artificial colors in the US, and therefore the colors of them are far more vibrant than these, which are using the natural colors. These are like the Picobellas, but the sour versions again. Oh, look, this is wild. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. I'm gonna need to break into one of these because this is obviously the Picobellas, but like the entire long sticks. I don't fully understand why in the US the selection of Haribo is so crappy compared to, look at all this. This is so great. So let's see what this tastes like. There's so much sugar in this. Like the emergency for me would be if I have low blood sugar, which happens. And absolutely, this would bring my blood sugar up really quickly. And I think Jonathan must have remembered, because I think I mentioned it when we were talking at VCF last year, that I really don't like the licorice flavor stuff that much. A little bit's okay, but some of it can be too much. So there was no licorice in here at all. So this is amazing. The first aid kit was so expertly packed by Jonathan. It's overflowing, and I still have a bunch of stuff that's not even in there. You could just kind of get an idea how heavy this is, how much candy's actually here. Okay, let's check out the 2 gringo gadgets that Jonathan sent along. Unfortunately, my TRS-80 Model 1 is currently, it's actually at my storage unit, so I can't easily grab it to even test these. But we can tell right off the bat that the one we're looking at here is clearly the parallel I/O interface. So USB power, that's awesome, really handy, I like that. Ribbon cable plugs into the expansion interface on the TRS-80 Model 1. And then we have a bunch of these chips here, which, can we get part numbers off these? Oh, I can't really tell, but we have all the digital I/O lines. And this little board is on one, oh, a little LED, so you can just tell that it's actually working. Oh, that is super neat. And what Jonathan mentioned in the letter is you set the base I/O, and these are the inputs, these are the outputs. And I assume with the base I/O, you might have, say it was 200, so 200, 201, 202, and 203, and then you would write 8 bits at a time to the respective I/O port to write to the outputs, or you would read with the in commands from one of these. Very clever and pretty simple. And obviously, if you're hooking this up to a parallel printer, the Centronics only uses 8 bits for the data path, of course, and then there's some extra control lines, and you would hook those up to the extra pins, and you set up the control lines appropriately, and then you could write the bytes to this. I think there's like a strobe, a couple other signals that tells the printer to, okay, pick it up off the bus, and then, yeah, that's pretty nifty. Clearly with something like this, you could interface to anything, paper tape printer, as Jonathan mentioned in the letter, but anything else as well. You could turn on LEDs, you could turn on relays, you could buy those like modern modules that are for Arduinos or whatnot, plug into this, turn relays off and on, so you could do home automation with your TRS-80 Model 1. And here's the other product that Jonathan sent along. This is the keyboard adapter. And this is great because it's very common with these computers to have issues with the crappy ribbon cable that unfortunately Radio Shack used to hook the keyboard up to the main PCB. And the problem with the one that Radio Shack used, it's just a single row of 20 pins, is it starts to corrode, and you have the traces that run through this sort of plastic membrane, and they get all blue and corroded, and it just stops working. And if you take the computer apart a few times, then you're done. So what this is nice is you have a pin header, which you can attach, I think Jonathan said, to the keyboard, and use this angled header. And then you do this correctly, and then you can unplug the keyboard. So you take the computer apart, it's great for working on it. Now what I did in the past is I used a single row of pins like this, but I used an IDE, 40-pin IDE cable. And of course I'm only using half the pins. You just connect it onto the angled pins on one set of the pins, and that's all you really need to use. So that's what I did, because the pin spacing on this type of ribbon cable is something that you might not have handy, but IDE cables, I mean, everyone has those, right? They're a dime a dozen. But this is pretty nifty because all the measurements have been done by Jonathan, and therefore, if you're replacing your cable, you can just get one of these and you don't need to. It took me a while when I was using an IDE cable to get it right with the angled connector and make sure it all fits in there, because it's a very, very tight fit where the ribbon cable is, especially as Jonathan mentioned in the letter, if things are socketed. All right, so I tried to go to Jonathan's website, memotronics.com, and I have an SSL version cipher mismatch. Let's just try from Google here. It's working. I don't know what I did wrong. Was it the www at the start? Yeah, okay. Well, Jonathan, you have a little misconfiguration on your web server there. So this website's pretty interesting. It's got like all sorts of interesting stuff on it, like LED turn signal flashers, and these are like car parts and light bulbs and super lube, printer ribbons and things. I'm not sure I'm on the right site, to be honest. But I did a search for Gringo Gadgets, and that did come up. And it is Memotronics. Yeah, okay, and these are other products that are also sold through Amazon. How interesting. And here we go. I just went to gringogadgets.com, and that brought me to all the stuff that is actually retro computer related. Here it is. Here's the digital I/O board. Here's the other stuff that's on here. Oh yeah, the little LED board that's attached to it. Let's check this out. It costs $40. We have no reviews yet. I can't be the first to review it. I was looking for a link to the manual. I know there's a QR code here, but it's harder to scan from my computer here. All right, scan the code, and it's manuals. Gringo Gadgets /manuals. Oh, there it is. The only manual that's there is the one for this board. A little bit more about the board. All I/O ports use HCT series logic. So that is like CMOS, but TTL compatible. And you can see, yeah, it works with TTL and CMOS voltage levels. Each of the I/O connectors contains 5-volt DC with ground and strobe pins. Oh, okay, that's cool. So I think that's what you would need to get the data in and out of various items like printers, but I think NES controllers as well. And yes, as I said, so 6-position dip switch is used to set the upper 6 bits of the I/O base address, and the lower 2 bits are managed by the SIO. So the lower 2 bits are for the 4 different ports required to read all 32 bits. The I/O board uses a range of 4 addresses. Since there are 4 addresses are assigned to any continuous block, only the first of these 4 addresses is configured by the user. This is known as the base address, and then the other 3 are going to be, incremented by 1 for the other ports. A good address to pick is 40, since it's not used by any other known expansion device. An example of a bad address would be 252, which would conflict with the TRS-80's internal use of port 255 to control the cassette interface. Right, so the way it works, if you were doing inputs, you would do INP and then the I/O port. So if you're using 40 as the base address, you use 40 or 41, 42, 43. And then the way you would write output is use the out command, and you do out 43, which would be the 4th port, right? Because it's 40, 41, 42, 43. And then this is the variable name, which is defined up here, which would be written to the 8 bits. The documentation is pretty thorough and explains exactly how you use this stuff. Cool. And here is all the contact information and the sales email and the websites and stuff like that from Memotronics. If you want to check it out for yourself, of course, I'll put those in the description below. And I gotta say, this is a very simple device and yet very clever, very useful if you're trying to use a TRS-80 Model 1 to interface to all sorts of stuff, and certainly easy to use. It's nice that the BASIC allows you to read and write from I/O ports so easily. It's very similar actually to BASIC on the IBM PC. The built-in BASIC when you first power up a PC or a PC XT allows you to read and write I/O ports as well. And this is probably pretty normal for x86 based systems or Z80 based systems, because Z80 systems have I/O ports. But if you're wondering about like the Commodore 64, the MOS 6502 and the Motorola 6800 that the 6502 is based off of don't have I/O addresses. Everything is memory mapped. If you used a device like this, it would actually occupy some spot of memory. The Commodore 64 already has the user port available to it, which is basically the same thing as what this is doing. It's just that you have to talk to those I/O lines using the 6526, which is what is controlling the signals, the I/O lines on the user port. It's not as easy to use as something like this, because with this device, you just use in and out. It's very easy to use. But on the 64, yeah, you have to do a lot more programming to get access to those extra user port lines. Now, for things like the Apple II, it doesn't even have a chip like the 6526 on board. It would need to be something plugged into one of the card slots. And usually with a memory mapped system like a 6502, you would use CIA, complex interface adapter, or VIA, versatile interface adapters. Like, it's kind of the same name for different things. It's usually a 40-pin dip, and it can control usually 16 lines in and out. You can configure in and out and stuff, but you got to program it, and there's registers to do that. And it's just a bit more complicated to use than this. It's not impossible. So thanks very much, Jonathan, for sending the culinary emergency first aid kit, and of course these awesome TRS-80 Model 1 parts. I'm gonna have to bust out my TRS-80 Model 1 and like bring it back from the storage unit. And I'm pretty sure I have an IDE cable in there already. But I have another TRS-80 Model 1 that this will be perfect in, so I'll have to install that in there. I don't know what I did. I pretty much always remove those cables, and if I didn't use an IDE cable, then I honestly don't remember what I did. But yeah, I probably used an IDE cable. But this is a great solution. And if you have a Model 1, highly recommend this. And then I'll have to play around with this thing. I mean, even if I just turn on these LEDs and make it blinky blinky, that could be pretty fun. But you could do all sorts of stuff with this thing. Sky's the limit. Like I said, NES controllers would work perfectly with a device like this. So that's going to be it for this video. Thanks again, Jonathan, for sending in all this stuff in the candy, and Alan for sending in all that cool random stuff, including that awesome PAKRAT-64 packet radio for the Commodore 64. That's super nifty, and I can't wait to give that a try. I'll definitely have to make a video about that. I mean, well, actually, if anyone's watching this video and is interested in seeing me try to use that packet radio, then yeah, definitely comment down below, let me know. Otherwise, I'm not sure how good ham radio videos are going to perform on my channel. I know there's some overlap between people who are into ham radios and this retro computer stuff. I'm just not sure how big it is, and a lot of people might just be like, whatever. And then thanks to my supporters, names are going up on the screen, YouTube junk, thumbs up, subscribe, all the usual YouTube junk. And that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye.